Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so excited you're here. Today, we're heading out on a massive expedition to uncover the wildest extremes of the African continent. We're going to look at landscapes that will absolutely blow your mind, incredible wildlife, and some of the most fascinating history on the planet. So, grab your virtual backpacks because this is going to be an epic journey. But hey, before we take that first step, I've got to ask you something. Can you guess which continent holds the world's longest river, the largest desert, and valleys so massive that you can actually see it from space? If you guessed Africa, you are exactly right. The scale of this continent is almost hard to wrap your head around, but that's exactly what we're going to do today. All right, so here's our official expedition itinerary for today. We're covering Africa's epic geographical extremes, exploring Egypt, sand and river, beyond the desert, diverse biomes, the wild side of Africa, Timbuktu and human history, and finally, some earth-shattering geological mysteries. Let's kick things off with Section 1, Africa's epic geographical extremes. Okay, so to really understand Africa, we've got to talk about plateaus. Now, a plateau is just an elevated area of flat land. And honestly, geometrically speaking, the entire continent of Africa is essentially one giant plateau. It's just this massive, elevated landmass that gets broken up by a few spectacular mountain ranges. And at the edges of this giant plateau, the land sometimes juts right out into the ocean, creating a cape, like the famous Cape of Good Hope down at the very southern tip. And because it's such a massive continent, it holds some serious world records. I mean, we're talking about the Sahara in the north, literally the world's largest desert. Up in the northwest, you've got the soaring Atlas Mountains. Head over to Tanzania and boom, Africa's highest peak, Mount Kilimanjaro. It's also home to Lake Victoria, which is Africa's largest lake. That one's actually bordered by Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya, and it feeds right into the longest river in the world, the Nile. Oh, and just for good measure, Africa also claims the second longest river too, the mighty Congo River. Moving right along to Section 2, Exploring Egypt, Sand and River. So if you're exploring the Egyptian desert, especially the vast mountainous Sinai Peninsula, you're definitely going to run into something called a wadi. A wadi is simply a dry riverbed. Since Egypt is mostly desert, with hot summers and mild winters, these dry riverbeds are super common. This arid, rugged landscape is also home to the Bedouins. They're nomadic Arab people who travel with their flocks all across the Sahara and the Arabian Peninsula, expertly navigating these dry environments, looking for grazing areas. Now, this brings up one of the coolest, kind of trickiest facts in geography. Usually when you look at a map, up is north and down is south, right? Well, in Egypt, it's kind of like opposites day. Upper Egypt is actually located in the south and Lower Egypt is in the north. Crazy, right? But here's why. It's all about the Nile. The Nile River flows from the southern highlands northwards, eventually emptying out into the Mediterranean Sea. So Upper Egypt is just upriver and Lower Egypt is downriver. Makes total sense when you think about it that way. That incredible river actually carves this lush, fertile valley straight through the desert. As the Nile journeys north, you'll sometimes hit what's called cataracts. These are wild, rushing waterfalls or rapid sections of the river. And finally, when the Nile reaches the Mediterranean Sea at the very end of Lower Egypt, it fans out, dropping all its rich soil and creating a delta. A delta is basically a triangular deposit of fertile earth formed right at the river's mouth. All right, on to Section 3, Beyond the Desert, Diverse Biomes. So Africa is so much more than just the Sahara. While most of the continent is warm or hot, the rainfall varies wildly, usually with 1 or 2 rainy seasons. And the crucial thing is how the land adapts to that rain. Check this out, more than 2/5, that's over 40% of Africa is covered by savanna. Those are these incredibly large areas of rolling grasslands. And then near the deserts, where it gets a bit drier, you'll find steppes, which are very dry grasslands with almost no trees. But on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have the number 100. In Western and Central Africa, the tropical rainforests get more than 100 inches of rainfall every single year. Because of all that constant rain, the forest floor is covered in thick, lush plant growth that we call a jungle. I mean, just imagine going from the dry, sandy wadis of the Sahara to a dense, green jungle getting over 100 inches of rain. The contrast is just mind-blowing. Next up is Section 4, the wild side of Africa. With all these different environments, from deserts to savannas to jungles, you get some of the most amazing natural resources on Earth. In the jungles, you have valuable hardwood trees like ebony and mahogany, plus oil palms. Out in the desert oases, you'll spot date palms and acacias. Down in the swamps, you've got mangrove trees, that literally stand up out of the water on these crazy stilt-like roots. And hidden within all these habitats are massive natural resources. We're talking petroleum, copper, gold, and precious diamonds. Plus, agriculturally, Africa produces most of the world's cassava, cocoa beans for your chocolate, and yams. And of course, we absolutely can't talk about Africa without talking about the epic animals that live here. Out on the grasslands, you'll find iconic wildlife like lions, elephants, giraffes, cheetahs, and ostriches. Hang around the rivers and swamps, and you'll see hippos, crocodiles, and huge, beautiful flocks of flamingos and pelicans. Deep in the tropical jungles, you've got chimpanzees and monkeys swinging through the trees. And here's a super cool fact, completely unique to the island of Madagascar off the east coast, you will find lemurs. You literally won't find them living in the wild anywhere else on the planet. Let's shift gears a bit for Section 5, Timbuktu and Human History. Africa's human history is incredibly rich. I mean, for example, before 1980, the modern country of Zimbabwe was actually known as Rhodesia. But right now, we're going to focus on a legendary city on the Niger River in Mali. Have you ever heard someone use the phrase, "it's as far away as Timbuktu"? Well, that idiom comes from real history. Hundreds of years ago, Timbuktu was an enormously important trade center. By the 1300s, it grew into this massive hub for arts and education. They built schools and libraries, drawing scholars and traders from all over the world, even from as far away as Italy. Because it was so famous but so geographically distant for many travelers, saying something was as far away as Timbuktu became the ultimate way to describe a really, really long trip. At its peak, this vibrant hub boasted a population of around 25,000 people, which back in that era was absolutely massive. While today Timbuktu is just a small, quiet town, its legacy as a bustling ancient center of human knowledge still lives on in our everyday language. And that brings us to our final topic, Section 6, Earth-Shattering Geological Mysteries. I want you to imagine a distance of 4,500 miles. That is the staggering length of the Great Rift Valley. Starting all the way up at the Red Sea coast, tearing right through Ethiopia, and going all the way down to Mozambique, this valley is a series of long, parallel cracks in the Earth's surface that form these deep, steep-sided valleys. It is literally a gigantic scar running across the face of the continent. But how did massive features like this, or the towering Atlas Mountains up in the north, actually get there? Well, our source text for this explainer outlines one possible explanation for these mysteries. According to the text, there's evidence suggesting that all 7 continents were originally joined together as one single large landmass, often called Pangaea. The source then notes that a cataclysmic event caused this supercontinent to divide and even crash together again. It's this violent, earth-shattering movement that supposedly formed those massive features like the Great Rift Valley and the Atlas Mountains. The text goes on to state that this catastrophic shifting could be linked to biblical events, specifically pointing to the Great Flood described in the book of Genesis, when the fountains of the deep opened up. It's really fascinating to see how different sources try to piece together the ancient, cataclysmic history of our planet's continents. And wow, that brings us to the end of our expedition today. We've seen a valley 4,500 miles long, a river that flows north, lush jungles getting 100 inches of rain, and an ancient city that drew scholars from across the globe. The African continent is just a true land of epic extremes. So, I'm going to leave you with this question to think about. From roaring cataracts to ancient desert cities, what part of the African continent would you explore first? Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and I'll see you on our next explainer.